Welcome back guys to another tier list video, and today we're going to be taking a look at patch 14.15 and break down all of the changes with plenty more buffs and nerfs to champions, items, boots and some runes too. Yep, you heard that correctly. Riot have basically said that boots are a bit too OP, so they're nerfing and changing them pretty hard in this patch as an attempt to make them generally weaker overall. The meta recently has basically been Warmog supports and AD carries in every single lane, so let's see what Riot have done this week to mix it up a bit. We're going to start off with the top lane as usual, and the first champion we need to speak about is the latest to join the Rift, Aurora. And already she's received her first round of nerfs. They've nerfed her passive movement speed, her W's cooldown, and her ultimate's damage and AP ratios too. So quite a bit at once, but when you've seen how strong this champion has been, it definitely makes sense. Aurora's release was initially not that scary, with players figuring out how to play her and build her, but within a week she was shooting through the tiers and winning an absolutely insane amount of games. She's got super high early game damage, crazy skirmish and snowball potential, and just a ridiculous amount of mobility. So from what we can see so far, she might just be another one of those really difficult champions to balance. Irelia is also on the menu for some buffs this patch, and this week they've buffed her base HP and nerfed her regen slightly, which does make a lot of sense because of her nature of life stealing through waves with her Qs anyway. Now we feel this change will be enough to make a good bit of difference for Irelia. She's all about those early all-ins, even at like levels 1 to 3 with max stacks of her passive and tons of early game damage and mobility through waves towards her enemies with her Q. That extra bit of HP allows her to force and fight early and often, and dive turrets at 6 and generally just snowball really quickly, which is what she does best if being played by the right player. We've got her in the A tier for the majority of ranks, and in our high elo tier list she's in the S tier. If you want to learn Aurelia and need to know how to play her and how to build her, then don't forget we've got you covered on our website with plenty of builds and runes and guides and combos and everything you need to get started. So check it out by clicking the link in the description. Speaking of high elo, one champion that is always popular here is Yone, and when he's strong he is heavily contested by high ranking players and very often pretty damn successful here too. Yone's buffs are basically supposed to be compensation buffs here for the nerfs to Kraken Slayer, Berserker's Greaves and Fleet Footwork. But with the buffs to his Q's damage, he's going to spike even harder at level 9 now and be able to get the ball rolling quicker. Plus he doesn't really need to build Kraken Slayer, he can just go for Blade of the Ruin King instead. Riot have nerfed his late game ultimate cooldown at the same time, but in reality, as good as this ability is, he doesn't exactly rely on it in the late game as much as you might think. Because at this point in games, he's already got insane amounts of DPS and mobility with the rest of his kit and those items anyway. We feel like Yone will be a solid pick this patch if you are good enough on him. So watch out for him and make sure you're ready to camp him to prevent him from playing the game. So let's have a look at the top lane tier list then, and in the S tier we have Aatrox, Akshan, Aurora, Camille, Darius, Fiora, Garen, Gwen, Kennen, Kled, Set, Tryndamere and Zac. There's still a lot of choice here with those consistent champs like Camille and Darius continuing to be insanely popular patch after patch. But also those champions that seem to just stay up here with the big boys week after week like Kennen, Set and Zac. Into the jungle next then, and let's see who's most affected here before we take a look at the tier list. Despite AP junglers still being super popular, they still haven't really got any nerfs. And actually a bunch more AP items like Cosmic Drive, Rocket Belt, Storm Surge and Void Staff have all been buffed. Which means we're probably going to see champions like Lillia continue to be a real problem. One champion that has been nerfed hard though is Shyvana, who recently flew up the tiers with a crazy win rate across the board, and it definitely makes sense for her to be in the patch notes here. She's got a couple of different nerfs all at once, so we have moved her down from S tier this patch and into the A tier for the time being. Recently she's had so much damage, insanely fast clears, she melts through objectives and can easily get such a huge experience and gold lead over her enemies that she can always feel like you're ahead of the curve. So let's see if these nerfs bring her back down to reality. I just hope she doesn't disappear off the face of the earth again, because let's be honest, it's only been a few weeks of seeing her for the first time in ages and she's already been nerfed. Skarner was completely OP after his initial rework and basically permanently picked or banned in either the jungle or the top lane since those changes. But eventually, after plenty of nerfs, Riot did one too many and he went from being insanely broken to basically the opposite. His win rate went down from like 54% down to 47% in the space of just a few hours. And ever since then, we just haven't really seen him. I mean, his pick rate in patch 14.14 over the whole 2 weeks was 0.6% in the jungle. So now Riot have given him some love again. This patch, his health growth has gone up along with his Q's mana cost being reduced. Now, these may not seem like the biggest changes in the world, but sometimes that's all it takes to shift a pick straight back into the meta again. So let's watch out for Skarner and see how he does this patch. So, in the jungle S tier this week, we have Fiddlesticks, Kha'Zix, Lee Sin, Lillia, Nocturne, Shaco, Udyr, Viego and Volibear. Now this definitely changes more the higher you go in ranks, because in our high elo tier list we've got plenty of other picks in the S tier like Hecarim, Karthus, Nidalee, Rengar, and even Talon too. So if you are slightly higher rank or you're really confident in your game, then don't forget about these picks either. Amumu is also doing much better than people give him credit for at the moment, and actually has a pretty damn impressive win rate right now. Cheesy picks like Warwick are also maintaining a juicy success rate recently too, so maybe it's time to give something new like this a go if you haven't already. Sylas has been meta for such a long time now, and always seems to find his place in the top tiers in the mid lane with each and every patch. But now for the first time in a while, he has received some changes. At higher ranks, players tend to max Sylas' Q more, as it's better for poke and lane control, but at all other ranks, everybody just defaults to maxing W. Riot are buffing his Q's cooldown, but nerfing his Q's 2 damage, as well as hitting his E2's AP ratio and his W's damage and healing ratios too. Now, all round, these do seem like pretty big nerfs overall, and it seems like Riot are trying to bring players away from that full AP Glass Cannon Sylas with these changes, and make him more of an AP skirmishing bruiser again. It definitely does make sense, because Sylas one-shotting carries with pretty easy to hit abilities doesn't feel that fun to play against. But for the most part, these changes are probably going to make a bit of a difference to his win rate, and maybe his popularity. Cassiopeia has never really been the most popular champion in the world, but that doesn't mean she's not top tier, because recently, over the last few months, she's maintained a whopping win rate across every rank. This patch, her base mana and QW and E's mana cost have actually been buffed. However, her Q and E's AP ratios have gone down instead. Now, Cassiopeia is a champion that tends to build a lot of mana anyway, so we do feel like these feel like nerfs overall. Cassiopeia will continue to be a great pick in the right matchups, but she won't be quite as strong as she has been recently. Another champion that has been changed in the mid lane this week is Akali, who's got her R1 damage nerfed, her R2 damage buffed, her ultimate's cooldown nerfed early game, and her W's cooldown buffed in the late game. These are some interesting changes, but 20 seconds longer on her rank 1 ultimate is going to feel quite bad. Your R2 might deal some more damage, but when you don't have it up as often, it might not be that great. Especially in those matchups in the mid lane where whoever has their ultimate first just straight up wins the lane. Now, Akali is pretty difficult to balance in general, because higher elo players just destroy entire lobbies with her. But for now, she is going to stay in the B tier for the majority of ranks. AD carries in the mid lane have quietened down a little bit recently, aside for in high elo, and with the further nerfs to runes and items for AD carries this patch, we do expect this to continue to calm down. Tristana's win rate did drop significantly in recent weeks, but honestly, I don't really think too many players are that sad to see her go. So let's have a look at the mid lane tier list then, and in the S tier we have Akshan, Anivia, Aurelion Sol, Aurora, Galio, Hui, Leblanc, Neferi, Talia, Talon, Vex, and Zed. Talon got a change to his Q this week, so it always dashes no matter what the distance, and this quality of life change will definitely help a champion that is already performing really well. Popular picks like Leblanc and Hui will continue to fill out a ton of your games, and do not forget about Zed this patch, as his Q got both base damage and AD ratio buffs together in this patch, so get ready for some Fed Zed redemption over the next few weeks. Well, let's get down to the bot lane next then, and to be honest, there is quite a bit of change here, with nerfs to Kraken Slayer, Static Shiv, Lord Dom's Regards, and Mortal Reminder. And don't forget, of course, Fleet Footwork. AD carries in general have just been super duper strong for most of this year, with the huge item changes and buffs at the start of Split 1, making this role one of the meta-defining roles in the game again. But here we are with another round of nerfs, which could see yet another big shift in the bot lane tier list. The items hit though are pretty much expected, with champions like Zeri and Kai'Sa being some of the strongest AD carries in the game due to these item choices being so strong. Ezreal is one of the main exceptions away from the Kraken Slayer or Shiv meta though. He's still been up there in the S tier with his own classic item combination. But the truth is, he has been too strong since his buffs a little while ago, and especially so at higher ranks, as those high elo players just absolutely farm LP with him. If you haven't seen a high elo Ezreal in action, I definitely recommend checking out some of those streamers like Dragdar, because when you watch a top Ezreal one-trick pony in action, it's pretty damn fun to watch. This patch, Ezreal is losing 10% off his Q's AD ratio though, which is part of the buff he received that made him so OP again in the first place. We've moved Ezreal down to the A tier for now, but let's see how he looks a week on. Varus got a bit of a little rework to his stats and stuff recently, and since then he's just not really been that relevant. He was a really popular high elo blind pick for quite a while, where you could just pick him for a guaranteed safe lane phase with solid poke and scaling and range CC. But then Riot said no more, and they wanted to make him attack speed focused instead, which is fair enough, but unfortunately he's just not really been strong enough since those changes went live. This patch, Riot are tweaking his numbers again, buffing his base AD, his passive attack speed, and W's on hit damage, which could be enough to see him rise, but until we have seen him in action on those live servers, we don't feel confident enough to move him up from the B tier just yet. But check back after the weekend where we'll upload our updated tier list video for you guys, taking a closer look at all the winners and losers of this patch. So how does all of this affect our AD carry tier list then? Well, in the S tier now we have Ashe, Jhin, Jinx, Kai'Sa, Kog'Maw, Seraphine and Twitch. Jhin has been a pretty strong option recently, if not slightly overshadowed by things like Kai'Sa and Zeri, which is why he will definitely secure that top spot with these champions being hit. This is also linked to why we've put Twitch in the S tier here too, because not only will he not be as affected by these item nerfs, but he's also a fantastic counter pick to champions like Jhin. Seraphine is still a top AP carry pick here too, and we also think Kog'Maw will return to the top tiers as he's not really been weak recently and better than most people think. Kai'Sa could go either way, but for now we're going to keep her in the S tier and see how those builds pan out. Finally, let's have a look at those supports then, and here it's been a mix of Warmogs rushing tanks and the strongest enchanters doing the best recently. And realistically, not too much is really going to change here. Leona though has just been too strong. She gets super tanky super quickly, deals a pretty surprising amount of damage for a tank support, and just packs an insane amount of CC, which has made her recently the perfect addition to any team comp. This week, Riot have nerfed her passive and W's damage though, which should make a little bit of an impact, but not enough to move her out of the S tier. Leblanc is one support you will want to keep your eye on though, because in some regions at high ranks, Leblanc has been one of the most OP picks in the support role, and when you think about it, it definitely makes sense. She's got super high early burst damage, great setup CC with those chains, amazing mobility, and that's just for the early lane phase. She then turns into a snowballing machine, especially when you think about her ability to roam and ability to gank other lanes as well. And before you know it, she'll be carrying the entire map without even having to worry about waves or CS. So if you do know how to play LeBlanc well enough, she is a fantastic pick as a support right now, so give her a go. So in the S tier in support, we've gone for Braum, Janna, LeBlanc, Leona, Lulu, Nami, Poppy, Pyke, Rell and Seraphine. Janna, Lulu and Nami have definitely been the strongest enchanters recently, and this doesn't look like changing anytime soon. There's also plenty of really strong A tier options like Blitz, Melio, Karma and Rakan, as well as those classic sustained powerhouses in Soraka and Sona. And that brings us to the end of our patch 14-15 tier list prediction video. We hope you enjoyed it and good luck in your solo queue adventures before the end of this split. Don't forget to check out Mobilitix GG before you go to find all the best builds, runes, combos, guides and more for every single one of your favourite champions. And if you are a fan of teamfight tactics, then don't forget the new set 12 has now gone live. And we're now running a little legend egg giveaway, where if you play one game of TFT a week with our app downloaded, you'll be automatically entered. Thanks everybody for watching guys, and as always, take care.